So I'm going to take a second and go over the rangefinder and text animations, as well as how to apply pre-built effects so that you guys can finish up your project this week. And I'll show you everything you need to know right here. So we'll start with, let's start by creating a background. So I'm going to go ahead and set my fill to, how about red? Click OK. And you know what? Rather than that, I'm going to go ahead and make a gradient fill background. So I'm going to click on the word fill, change that to radial, click OK. And then when I go back to color, you'll see that I have the radial option here. I'm going to go ahead and set my opacity back to 100%. And let's go ahead and change the color from blue to red. Okay, so now I've got a red and black gradient, radial gradient. And you can see I still have my fill set, or excuse me, my stroke. So I'll go ahead and set that to 0. Even though you can't see it, there's no point in rendering it. All right, and then if I hit the V key, I'll get the little control arm that I can pull out here. And now we have a nice looking textured background with a little hot spot in the middle, which I think looks pretty cool. Okay, so the background's done. Now let's grab some text, and I'll do a couple frames of this. So first off, if we want to animate the text ourselves, which you are welcome to do, I'll show you how to do that right now. So I'll just type in, here is some, and then we'll type text on the next one. I'll go ahead and, since that's selected, I'll use the align button to center it. And since I'm not doing a advertisement for Russia, I might change the color from yellow and red to something else. Let's try a fill color of, I don't know, gray, no. Notice there's a stroke on there I got to get rid of. Let's do light blue. There we go, that looks good. Okay, and I'll set the stroke, excuse me, yeah, the stroke to nothing. All right, and there we go. So there's our text. I was getting a strange ghosting in the background, but it appears to be gone. I'll make it just a little bit bigger. All right, so now I want to animate this text, and I only want it to be about 2 seconds long. So I will jump to 15 frames, and that way I can animate this on. And what I want to do here is click on the text itself, open up the triangle, go to the word animate, and click the parameters that I want to animate. In this case, I'll choose all parameters. That gives me everything, so I can choose whatever I want. And in this case, I'm going to take the scale down to 0, and why don't I set the skew value to, I don't know, 18. Okay, and I'm going to put a keyframe for that on scale and skew. And actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to the animator and the range selector and just kind of play with what I've done there. Notice that it starts skewed and then it straightens up. So essentially, using the start controls takes all the changes that I made, those 2 parameter changes, and it animates between those and how it looks when these parameter changes are set to 0. Or excuse me, 100, set to 100% in the case of scale and set to 0 in the case of skew. So all I need to do to animate this is set the start value to 0, put a keyframe, and move this forward to say 2 seconds and bring that all the way up to 100%. And actually I'm going to drop it back to 1.5 seconds so that we have some time before, and there we go. So that's how we can do it if we want to do it ourselves, and it basically works the same with any parameters. If I come back here, now that I've already set the start to go from 0 to 100%, I can go back and play with some other things. I can play with rotation. I can make it rotate. Knowing that it's going to sort of fix itself as it hits 100%. So at the beginning, it'll be out of place, it'll be rotating, and then by the time it gets to where it's going, if I use page down, go frame by frame, you can see that it's moving in position, it's moving in rotation, it's also scaling, and there's a skew down there, but you can't really see it because it gets kind of messed with in the rotation. But anyways, I could add more rotation, bump it up to a full 360, and now you can see that the text is doing a full rotation as it moves in position from down here to up there. If I go back to position and set that to 0, hit 0, hit return, I could play with the X value. Start them all spread out and have them kind of flying in from the right. And now we see this. Kind of cool. Okay, so that's how we're going to do this. That's one way to do it, but I'm not requiring you to come in here and animate these all by yourself because there's plenty of great animations already available in your presets. So let's go ahead and jump to the 15 frame marker, go to animation presets, come down here to, and effects and presets, and then come to text, and then there's lots of these here. Now what I tried to show you in class last week that didn't really work was this. If you choose these little bars right here and you choose browse presets, it will actually open up Adobe Bridge and you will see all of your presets, and you can get kind of an idea of what they do. As we're opening Bridge here, I'll show you just a quick example of what Bridge does for After Effects. No. Sure, whatever. All right. So here we are in Adobe Bridge, and there's a lot of stuff in here. If we come down to text, let's make sure we're in the right spot here. Backgrounds, behaviors, text, double click on it, animate in. These are all the options, and what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to be able to see little animated previews of these, but we may be using a little more processing power than my computer has available, and therefore it's not doing a whole lot. Really all you're getting is this little visual, which can help, fade up words, fade in from the bottom. But what I wanted you to do is animate 10 lines of text so that you kind of get in here and start to see what what some of these are going to do for you. And there we go. So if you want to see them in Bridge, you can. If not, you can come right over here and just start playing with some of these and dragging them out. So I'm going to start at 1 second just so I have a nice even starting point, and I will just go down the list here. I'm going to add in a center spiral, and notice these keyframes way over here. That's the spiral and the fade in, but they're little dots, which basically means I can't move them. So what I need to do is close this and then hit the U key, and that's going to give me control over these keyframes now. And we can see what's happening. Okay, it's just going way too slow. So I want the animation to last about a second. So I'm going to pull the fade in to 1 second. I'm going to pull the spiral to 1 second, and I might even pull the fade into half a second so that we can really see what's going on. Cool. All right, and then I want to leave a second for it to be red. So here's what I'm going to do. I now need to trim this clip down to 2 seconds because that's really all I'm going to use of it. So I can put my mouse at the beginning and I can trim by just peeling it back. And then There's 1 second, 1 second for it to animate, and 1 second for it to be read. Now I need to cut it right here. So I'm going to hit Shift Command D. And that splits the clip into 2 pieces. I'm going to go ahead and select the second half and hit the delete key. And now we have 2 seconds of animated text. And if you want to smooth it out, you could even select those keyframes and hit FN, F9. Although it's happening pretty fast, so we probably won't notice too much of a difference. It actually looked a little better when it stopped moving. It kind of had a little bit of an ease that I liked. So that's basically it. Now I can take this text and I can move it back to 0 if I want to start there, and then jump right over to my next, put it at 2 seconds, come out here and type some text. What did I say in the last one? Here is some animated text. All right, and again, align, click, click, easy. And notice that that is starting at the very beginning and going well past where I need it. So I'm going to trim it back to the 2 second mark. I'm going to grab the decoder fade in. I'm going to drag that down and drop it on there. I am going to drag it over to 4 seconds. And I am going to hit Shift Command D to trim it, delete the second half, and then I'll retime the animation by clicking on the layer, hitting the U key, and notice my keyframes are way out there. Let's see. I'm going to hit minus on the timeline here. Command minus? Nope. It's because I have that window selected. Doesn't seem to want to let me deselect it. Let's use the slider. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command Z because when I split this, let's see, where is my second keyframe here? Start, and my second keyframe must be past where I started. So I'm going to drag this back. There's my second keyframe way out there. All right. So obviously this animation takes 1 second. So if we set it at 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4.5 seconds is how long that by default this animation takes to animate in. So I got to grab that keyframe and drag it back and cut down that time. So I'm going to, again, put that keyframe at 3 seconds. And there we go. We don't see a whole lot of, I think, what this animation really does because it happens so fast. But as you can see, it's sort of shuffling through letters before it lands on the correct one. All right, so I'm at 2 seconds. Animation lasts for 1 second. I'm going to drag the playhead to 4 seconds. And I'm going to trim this one more time. And now we have 1 second, 2 seconds of animated effect. All right, I'll select those keyframes, FN, F9, and I'll move on. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and shrink down my screen a little bit. So I have a 5 second duration on this because it's defaulting to the same as the last one. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to 20 seconds. Since I need to do 10 2-second animations. And I need to do a title as well, so that's going to be 2 seconds. So I'm going to go down to comp settings and set this to 22 seconds. Click OK, and now I can continue on to my next one. So just simply grab my text tool by hitting Command T, come over here. What I say, here's some text, here's some animated text, and then the next line will say that we created in, and then we'll, oops, save the answer for the next one. Come down here to align, click, click. I'm going to trim this. Somehow I got an empty text layer, I'll delete that. I'm going to trim this right here by hitting Shift Command D and deleting the first half. Again, you're starting to see that sort of stepping staircase that you get when you edit in Premiere or in After Effects. I'm going to jump to 6 seconds. I'm going to chop it again. Shift Command D. There we go. Now I have it trimmed down. Oh, notice my background only lasted for 5 seconds, so I need to stretch my background out for the entire duration. Okay, got the next one that we created in. I'll go ahead and just grab, drop in by character, drag that down, and as you can see, might be the lamest text effect there is because we can see it right there, which doesn't make any sense. Is there a way to extend the drop? I don't know. Let's take a look. We come over here to, let's see, Animator, Range Selector, Position. Okay, so the position starts at -291. Let's see if we can crank that up to something higher. There we go, 687. Now it's off the screen. Now, there we go. It drops all the way down. But the problem is our keyframes are way out here. They're not in the right spot. We need to fix that. Now, notice these are round keyframes. What this is telling you is that there's a keyframe there, but you can't grab it, can't control it. And the reason is because it's not, the parameter for this keyframe is not open. If I go down to Range Selector, then I can see, okay, start and end. That's where the keyframes are. On the start, well, it's all on the start, but it's on the Range Selector. So rather than twirling down all those triangles, what you can do when you see round keyframes that you can't edit, all you have to do is click on the layer and hit the U key. And that brings up whatever parameter has keyframes on it, which makes it a lot quicker to get in there and retime these keyframes. Select them, FN, F9, and let's try that again, FN, F9, there we go. I can watch it back. Very fast drop in. Okay, and so again, I'm just going to essentially repeat that same process 10 times. I'll do one more and then I'll go back and talk about the title real quick. So I'll do one more one for After Effects here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to type over, I'm going to hit the text key or text tool, Command T, and type in After Effects CC. All right, After Effects CC. And then I'll go to Align and Align and Align. All right. Now we have our final one that I'm going to create. Again, I'll do a title after this. So again, I'm just going to trim it back here. I could either grab it and trim, or I could hit Shift Command D, which would split the clip right there. And then I would delete the part that I don't want, which is what I'm going to do right here at 8 seconds. Select, Shift Command D, splits the clip. I don't want this second half, so I select it and hit delete. And there I have my After Effects. All right, so now I'm going to grab whatever the next effect is, and it looks like it is going to flip my text up, which looks cool. Again, I'll click on the text, hit the U key, see that my keyframes are a little far apart, so I'm going to move those into 1 second, select them, FN, F9. And there we go. It's pretty fast, but again, we don't want these to last a half hour. All right, so there is essentially what you're going to do for the text animation portion. Now, again, I should have grabbed a song or some lyrics here, but for this case, you know, you get the idea of how the text works. But I want a title, meaning if I was going to do a song lyrics, I want to do a reveal with the song title, and I want you to use the reveal technique that we created. So I'm going to grab all of these layers except my background layer, and I'm going to slide them to, I don't know, 3 seconds, so I can have a little longer reveal on the title. And then I will come out here and type out my title, which is going to be, I don't know, doesn't really matter for this example. After Effects example. Should work. All right. Except I don't want to delete it. Let's see. Let's go delete. There we go. All right. So I'll center it, and I'm going to have to shrink it down to make it fit. I'm going to use the character window and the text size adjustment. All right, and again, notice it's much longer than we need, so I'll come here to the 3-second mark, select it, Shift-Command-D, trim it, and now I just have this little intro. So let's go ahead and use that reveal effect that we learned earlier, which is pretty straightforward and easy. I'm going to come down and create a quick cursor here, and again, I've set to fill, so I'll set that to 0, and I'll set the stroke to 18 pixels. And click OK. Notice it looks a little weird, so we'll come in here and make some adjustments, hit the V key, see if I can slide that together. It looks like I might have to increase the stroke a bit. There we go. And make it a little smaller and just a touch narrower, and I'll position it right about there. All right, there's our cursor. And now, let's see, where do I want? I have 3 seconds. So I'm going to set the playhead at 20 frames. That'll give me 20 frames for this to grow. Right now, I'll go ahead and animate the mask. So I take the word After Effects example, I select it, I come up to my rectangle tool, and I literally am going to set this like right on top of the cursor and drag out my mask because I want to make sure that it is right on top of the cursor so that when I animate them, they move together. So there's our mask, but in this case, it is doing the opposite of what we want. So I'm going to go down to Layer Effects Example, Mask, and choose Subtract. Now it's gone. Perfect. So I can go ahead and animate my shape now. I'm going to hit the P key for position because I need to make the cursor move across the screen. So I will put the playhead where I want that to start, 20 frames in, click position, and then I'm just going to hold down Shift as long as I have my selection tool selected, which I currently have the rectangle tool. So I have to hit the V key. Now I have my selection tool, and I'll just hold down Shift and use the arrows to scrub this across my text. But the problem is I can't see my text. So I don't know exactly where to end it. So I can come back and just turn the mask back to add and realize that I need to go, oh, I skipped a step. Sorry about that. Forgot to move my cursor. As if After Effects isn't challenging enough, trying to talk while you're doing it is tricky. All right, so again, position, move the playhead. I'm going to move it to 2 seconds and 20 frames. Actually, I'll move it to 2 seconds and 10 frames. And then I will scrub it across and create that motion path. Again, I can turn this mask to add so I can see the text. And again, all I'm worried about with this is just creating the motion path for the cursor. And if I watch it back, it starts about a letter ahead and ends about a letter behind. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so now I'm going to set the mask back to subtract. I'm going to click on it so I can see it. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing with the mask path. I'm going to set the playhead at 20 frames. I'm going to drop down the triangle for the mask path. I'm going to click on the word mask path because that's what this is. And click a stopwatch for the mask path. And then I'll drag this over here and literally hold down Shift and just use the arrow key and line it up right with that. Now if I drag it back, there shouldn't be any gaps between the mask and the cursor. Looks pretty clean. All right, watch it. All right, looks good. Again, I'm going to select all of these keyframes and FN F9. And the only thing I have to do now is create the cursor growing and shrinking, which I can just come right over here, select the layer for the cursor, and hit S for scale. I'm going to go ahead and drop a keyframe right here because this is how I want it to look at that point in time. And then I'm going to go backwards to about 5 frames. I'm going to unlock the X and Y parameters, and I'm going to set the Y parameter to 0. And that is how you make it grow vertically. All right, now the other thing I'm going to do, since I want it to shrink, is I am going to copy these keyframes, Command C, go over here and paste them, Command V, and then just simply click off and reverse them. And that way it will cause it to shrink. And there we go. All right, now let's go ahead and just make this text all look a little bit better by adding a drop shadow. We've got this vignette back here, so drop shadow will kind of match that. So I'm just using this as an example. I'm going to select this text. I'm going to go up to Layer, Layer Styles, Drop Shadow. And by default, drop shadow is okay, but I like to add just a little bit more distance. So I'm going to come over here to my text, and there's my layer styles right there. And there's drop shadow. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to push the distance back a little bit, and then I'm going to soften it up a little bit by increasing the size. There we go. And the size softens it up so you get kind of a nice, little bit less. You can increase the spread, and you just get kind of a nice effect. You could also drop the opacity if you want to soften it up a little more. I like subtle drop shadows, and now we have that. And the cool thing is once you get your drop shadow dialed in the way you like it, all you have to do is click on the word Layer Styles, hit Command C, and you can copy that onto the rest of these just by selecting them and hitting Command V. And now we're going to see that drop shadow on all of our text. And I like it. All right, so the last thing we could do would be to drop in a sound effect. Now, if I come over to, let's see, where would I find a sound effect? Well, actually, I have this really cool pack called Animation Composer, which if I come to here, and I believe they have some sound effects. Let's see. Okay, so here's how you add sound. Again, you could basically drag in any sounds you want, import them the way you normally would. So if you have sounds available, this is just an easier way for me to get this because I have this right here. And there we go. By just, if you import a sound, it's going to end up looking like this. And I'm going to go ahead and drag it down to the bottom. I like to keep all my sounds down there. And I'll close this window. So again, I used an internal piece of software, but if I had just imported one into my project window and dragged it down, it would look exactly the same as this. And notice if I click down, there's audio and audio again, and then there's waveform. That's really the most important part for me, because that lets you know where the sound is being created. So in this case, I'd probably drag it out to where the it's not really all that great for what we're doing here. Although it's not that bad either. What I want to do is basically figure out where that last keyframe is and put the sound right underneath that. So there's the last keyframe where it spins into place, and ideally I would have the sound come in as it comes to a stop. And then if I wanted to duplicate the sound for each one, I would just hit Command D to duplicate it again. I might even mark it. Let's see, I can see that actually the sound looks like it starts right at the beginning. So I'll go to this one, I'll hit U, and then I'll take this second sound and I'll line it up with the sort of final keyframe. Maybe even just a touch before as it eases in. And listen. You get a very sort of, I don't know, it's a funny effect. And we can do it one more time. Again, just select it, Command D. Probably makes sense to use a different sound effect for each one of these. But if I hit U over here, let's select this, Command D to duplicate it. Come over, drag it so it syncs up with the second keyframe in the animation. And we have this. All right, a little bit dramatic, but you get the point. So that is a not a short tutorial on how to basically do this project. It's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. It's just repetitive. Don't go too fast or you might get confused or messed up. But we want to have a title and we want to have 10 frames of animated text. All right, that'll do it.